Hi, my name is Erin Schwanitz-Vogt. I'm the Director of Sales for Coldspring in the eastern half of the United States. And today I'm joined by Jason Kraft, part of our project management team, and Justin Piepenberg, our designers. So today we want to talk to you a little bit about private estate sales and how Coldspring can help support you start to finish to ensure a successful project and provide a great experience for you and your family. Now, private estate sales are really exciting. They're not the sales that come across every day. And we know that a lot of times they can be a little bit intimidating. So we're here to help out with that, try to make it a little bit easier. Some of the support that we can offer on the front end is our sales team can provide you with training to give you the knowledge and confidence to present a private estate to every family, every time. And our talented design and project management team can lend their expertise to the project to ensure that there's no surprises during the fulfillment. So once you have a private estate family interested, call us at Coldspring so that we can help you work through every design and detail and make sure that everyone walks away feeling really great about the project. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about how the process might work. Now, you have a family come in for the first time to talk about a private estate. There's two things that are really important to try to establish, and part of that is what their wishes are and also the budget. But with that said, we know it can be a little bit tricky to get to that budget question. You know, if you think about buying a car, that's something we've all done, right? You guys, Justin likes cars. I know he's bought a few. You probably do a little research on the front end, and you know a lot about the makes, the models, what you might expect to pay. And you can go to the dealership and inform consumer, and you can negotiate for that car purchase. It's a little different with a private estate. Family walks in, they've probably never done it before. They don't know what the options are. They don't know what to ask. And if you ask them what they're willing to spend, they're probably going to look at you and say, I don't know, what does it cost? So how do you navigate that early stage of that sales process and get off on a good foot? So one of the things we recommend at Coldspring is reaching out. We can help you with some budget pricing on a couple of buildings to help qualify the budget and understand where the family's comfortable spending. We also have our private estate design book, which is a great tool to get started with. With this book, you can share design ideas with the family and find out what they like and don't like. So now that we've narrowed in on a design idea and also the budget, we find often families want to go to a custom building, and that's when we get our design team engaged. So Justin, maybe could you tell us a little bit about what's most important to your team? What kind of information helps you really capture the family's vision?
First and foremost, Erin, the most important thing is being able to utilize the space available. There's many ways to interpret that. Sometimes it's the type of site that we're in the cemetery that we're allowed to use. That might mean there's an aggressive slope or grade to the site, or perhaps it's flat and we have to focus on how many crypts or niches do they want inside of the building. And then we'll refer to the book and use our book or our current or existing designs and use that as a general starting point to design their custom mausoleum. The book, I think, is most beneficial to be viewed not as a catalog,
right,
but as a starting point to get their personal project started. And then if we're able to obtain the raw, unfiltered information from the family, whether it be through a counselor or through emails, and then we pass it down through the design team, and then they use their experience or my experience to create something that didn't otherwise exist through the use of like a traditional building. We try to maintain classical architecture, the rules, as closely as we can on the scale that we're allowed, while we always try to keep the budget in mind. And like you had said, oftentimes the first iteration of design, they don't know what it will cost. And our job is to put visuals to their wants, and then our estimating and project management department will move into putting a price on that.
Perfect. And are there any things that you can think of that are the emotional tells when you're having those conversations? How do you pick out what's most important? Because the list could be long and maybe we can't incorporate all of them.
Well, Stone color is a big one. There are certain likes and dislikes. We are very benefit here at Coldspring to have a variety of stone colors and finishes, and being able to leverage those to their likes. For example, there's certain styles out on the East Coast that tend to be very traditional, which are very different than that on the West Coast. There's also cemetery rules.
Right.
Oftentimes we might need to use 8-inch walls, or we may have a height restriction or a rule that we are unable to use bronze. So those are things that are great to know up front,
Sure.
so that we don't create a like or a dislike while not working within the bounds of the cemetery.
That's a good point, because there's a lot of variation from property to property, and we don't know everybody's rules. So trying to communicate that in the beginning will save us from rework and the potential that someone might fall in love with something they can't have. That would never be good. So the other thing I wondered about is, this tends to be a longer sales cycle than some things like, Flush Granite Memorial, let's say. Do you have any tips for narrowing down the number of design iterations or shortening that design process?
Anytime we get to talk with the end user or the buyer, it benefits all parties involved, as it's impossible to hear a conversation and relay it accurately for the second time, because there's going to be certain questions that the designer may have that weren't asked during the meeting. So assumptions will need to be made, and oftentimes it's in the wrong direction. So having that back and forth with the family, or a lot of times an owner's representative, is extremely beneficial. Whenever you're designing anything, there's just, a number of different variables. And if one thing is asked for, the second thing may modify what was first asked for or change it altogether. So having that back and forth conversation about the cause and effect of the design elements requested is paramount.
Absolutely. And at Coldspring, there's a couple ways to accomplish that. We could do Zoom meetings for those folks that don't want to meet face-to-face. We can travel to the location if it makes sense, or we always welcome guests here at Coldspring to come tour our facilities, meet with the team, and we have a guest home here as well that those folks can stay in so they can enjoy time with their family while they're here to design this really custom, personalized building. So lots of ways we can accomplish it. So we just recommend always having that conversation. We're here to support, not necessarily to step in and take over the sale. We're really here to make you a success. So rest assured, we'll have all the conversations on the front end to make sure we're all working lockstep to get through the process together. Absolutely. I love that. So, we talked a lot about just some of the design concepts and how we can get there. And we touched on it a little bit earlier about the site within the cemetery. And we know that has a big role to play in these projects, not only potentially in the design side of it, but Jason, for your project management team, site access and the lay of the land, so to speak, is a big deal. Tell us what's really important for the project management team to know on the front end.
The site access is a very big deal. A lot of the things that can affect the construction of the building is cemetery gates. How wide are their gates? A lot of cemeteries are older and not built for large semis to get in and out. The other item is turns, and if there's a lot of slope to the site, we'll need to know what that slope is, so the building does fit that lot properly. Some other concerns are how far off the road it is. If it's a long reach, we can still do it, but we need to know ahead of time, so we order the proper crane and accommodate for that. In different ways that we can do that, possibly if we were going to originally pre-assemble that building, we would set it on site as loose pieces. That cuts down on the weight that we actually have to lift, and cuts down on the cost of the crane and the size of the crane that we need. Some of the other items is just the access the access into the cemetery, and then also working hours. If there's restrictions on times that we can work, we need to know that up front. Or when we can come in, usually we work long days, and a lot of times we'll work weekends too, just so we can get our setters back home with their families. That's about what I can think of right now.
Okay. Yeah, and some of the ways to communicate that. So like when you've got a family and they've identified the location within the cemetery where the building's to be placed, sometimes just like a cemetery map with the area marked, we can go on Google Earth and we can look at it too. We can get a sense of what the roads are like. We're gonna probably need you to fill in some of the blanks, like, hey, are we gonna have overhead obstructions like tree limbs, power lines, that sort of thing. But we can start to build the picture on our end. And the reason we ask all these questions up front is really because, as Jason mentioned, sometimes you need a bigger crane, sometimes you might need a transfer truck, and that does impact project pricing. And the last thing we want to do is erode your margins. So we want to make sure that we account for that on the front end so that when you make the sale, you've got everything covered and you don't have those unpleasant surprises on the back end that are going to create stress for you, potential delays in the project, all of those things. So while it may feel a lot early on, it's so much easier to have the conversation up front than to try to back into it later on and figure out how we're going to fix something. So if you wonder why our team asks so many questions, sometimes that might be why. We've had some experiences, I'm sure, in the past that led us to maybe want to get that information right up front. But with that said, a tough site doesn't have to be eliminated. We just want to know about it so we can plan for it. Do you guys have any examples of jobs where we had to work within a tough cemetery site that were a big success?
Yeah, we did a project in Charleston, South Carolina, where going in, we knew it was an old historic cemetery that really all it had was small dirt roads to get in and out.
Mm-hmm.
But we knew that ahead of time. And then we also knew that there was poor soils. So that special accommodations would be needed for the foundation. So what we did was before we signed the contract, the project management team flew out there and met with the crane company to come up with a game plan on where to set up the crane, how we were going to get our pieces back into that area. And then also it needed piles, so how many piers we might need and how we're going to get equipment in there. The other difficulty was they had a couple of trees that they really wanted protected because they were important to the family. So we worked around that and we did figure out a way to make that happen. And the project was a great success.
Mm-hmm.
So had we not had those upfront conversations, it could have been a whole different story.
Absolutely. Well, and I think at the end of the day too, I mean, everybody walked away feeling good from that project because the family was pleased. We had a successful installation, you know, and I'm sure the cemetery is very proud to have that piece in there as well. It's a beautiful project. So really that collaboration and coordination is what we're striving for so that everybody can be successful. You know, really, I think at the end of the day, you know, we want to work with you really closely on the front end. We want to help you get to that point of sale. Once a sale has been made and you've contracted with Coldspring for a private estate, though, the support doesn't go away. Really, Jason, you and your team pick it up at that point and take people through every step of the way. So what could they expect when they're working with your project management team? What happens after
Our
a sale?
project management team does take over the project. And as they go along, they work with our drafters to produce the shop drawings. And then they work with the family and cemetery, securing the approvals and making sure that what they were expecting they were going to get is what they're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
We work on make sure that there's the correct door and window selections, give them stained glass options if that hadn't been worked out already. And then we also work with the plant. Once all the drawings are approved, all the cutting information goes out to the plant, and then we work with the plant on the schedule and any questions that may arise in the fabrication. And then we also work with we schedule foundation contractors, and then in the end, we line up our stone setters and finish off the project.
Awesome, thank you. And at the end of the day, we just want you to know we're here to support you. There's a huge team here at Coldspring that has a lot of expertise that they can lend to your project, and we want to make sure that we make it a success. So feel free to reach out, let us know how we can help you, and we look forward to working with you on your next project. Thank you.